Good morning, everyone. Next, I wanted to welcome the leaders of the Monograph product team to share about the next round of innovation that we're providing for our current and future customers. Invoicing is important to us here at Monograph because we recognize that while design work is extremely important, it's also important to get paid for that work. It can take a long time to prepare invoices, and on top of that, clients often struggle to decipher the invoices they get from architects. That's why I'm really excited for Pete, Alex, and special guest Thomas Budzik to talk about some of the major improvements we've been making in that workflow. Pete, join us on the stage.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for spending part of your day here with us. GV, thanks for the introduction.
Really excited. This is going to be great.
Over the next 30 minutes, I'll share some research we did around the invoicing process and the innovations that came out of that research. Then you get to drop in on the conversation between Alex and Thomas. So let's do it. As I mentioned, I'm Pete Delicato from my home here in Los Angeles. I spend the majority of my time researching and listening to our customers, and then working with the legends on our product and engineering team to continually improve the product. So speaking of research, I'd love your take on invoicing today. How do you feel? There should be a poll tab over on the right-hand side of your screen, so go ahead. Let us know how you feel. Take a few moments, let the results roll in, and then George, my friend, is going to tell us what we're seeing in those poll results. George, what are we learning here?
So it seems like, I think it's just kind of trickling at the moment, but we have, it's interesting a lot. Right now it's about neutral. So some people feel very negative about it. Some feel very positive about the kind of the impact that invoicing has on the experience. But I think in general, actually very negative as we're starting to see more votes roll in. Some people, it seems like there's a kind of neutral sense about it. And I'm very curious to learn more about that piece of it. But people feel like maybe they don't yet understand the challenges that the clients face as well from that perspective. But
yeah. I can understand that. Out of all of the customers we talked to, very few expressed a sense of pleasure in their invoicing work that they had to deal with on a typically monthly basis. So thanks everyone for that input.
Thank you.
Very interesting indeed. Thanks, GV. As I mentioned earlier, we prioritize understanding our customers. That was no exception for our recent invoicing work. We talked to dozens and dozens of firms and analyzed more than 40 sample invoices at the end of the day. And as you can imagine, we learned a few things along the way. I'm going to share those things with you all. One, getting the right data is laborious. The information you need to create an invoice is typically obtained from a mix of conversations, spreadsheets, emails, old invoices. You might have your tasks and milestones in some web app while your contract data is sitting in a Dropbox folder somewhere, for example. Meanwhile, only a conversation with your project manager is going to tell you how much budget you've really burned through. So in other words, the key information is not right there at your fingertips. Collecting it takes everyone's time, and time is money. Spreadsheets, which have been around for around 40 years, almost as long as I have, just aren't cutting it either. The most advanced setups that are run by a bunch of interconnected spreadsheets are fragile at best. Their connections aren't clear, users break them, they fall out of date, and often without anyone really knowing. It's kind of a silent but critical problem. Even the simplest setups require time-consuming copying and pasting from one spreadsheet to another. One particular customer research interview stands out amongst these. It was a firm of 12 that was taking on average 3 hours per project to produce an invoice on a monthly basis. And they were routinely invoicing for around 20 projects per month. You can do the math from there. A lot of time and money spent on the invoicing process. The point is, spreadsheets take a lot of time to create and manage, and they're error prone. Alternatively, a lot of this information ends up in general professional services or accounting software like QBO or Big Time. And unlike Monograph, these systems are not purpose-built for architects. They're kind of the lowest common denominator. So they require configuration out of the box to organize your projects, time, and invoices into something that only begins to loosely resemble the way that architects think and work, e.g. on phases with roles, etc. So using generalized software for architecture projects can feel like a square peg in a round hole, and that configuration takes time. And we haven't really gotten to arguably the most important part of invoicing, your client's experience. What do they see when you send them that invoice? And all those sample invoices I mentioned earlier, we saw it all. In fact, I might even be a little scarred by the whole ordeal. I'll spare you the details beyond the sampling you see here on the screen. But as you can see, there were incredibly confusing invoices, overly simplistic invoices, and everything in between. We've been collecting data on this for a couple months now. We released a lot of what you're about to see in December. And we've already seen the benefits of good-looking, well-organized invoices in our own data. Since we launched our new and improved invoicing feature, which you're going to see in a second, we've seen those who use it getting paid faster on average than those who don't. So, better-looking invoices means more money in your pocket faster. All of this research and this data has led us to this belief. Invoicing should be a quick and well-informed exercise that results in an invoice that represents your firm's clear communication and aesthetics. So based on this belief, we've built an architecture-specific invoicing workflow that I'd love to show you next. I'll walk you through a sample project and create a new invoice in this demo. Let's go over the project setup first. So here you see a sample project that has a mix of fixed and hourly phases. Each phase has a budget or a max cap, as you would expect. Pretty standard setup. Now on the Gantt chart, you see we have milestones and tasks in each phase. Each milestone includes a few tasks. And we're a couple months into the project, so some of those tasks have been completed, and some of the milestones have been achieved. Now, over on the project's financials report, you can see we've already invoiced and been paid for some of our previous work. But there's a lot of unbilled work that we need to capture for February. Now, over on the invoice list, we can see we've already issued and been paid for one invoice for January. So let's build that February invoice. As I create the February invoice, the first thing you'll see is a modal that asks for the invoice number, which we auto increment. And then it asks for a services through time frame, which I set to the month of February. Then we move into the invoice builder flow. So as you build your invoice, we're going to walk you through each of these sections, these tabs you see at the top. That'll guide you through what you should consider invoicing for. In fact, you'll see a little bit of a hint of the amount of unbilled work in a few of those tabs. For each fixed phase, you can see them listed over here on the left, we arm you with a few things. One is the amount of planned budget for that phase, and that comes right out of the planner you saw earlier. Two, the amount of unbilled work both prior to the time frame and during the time frame that you set when you started creating this invoice. This gives you a sense of how much work's been done during that time frame and how much holdover you have from your previous invoices. The next thing you'll see over to the right is some information on tasks and milestones. This gives you a sense of what you've really achieved in terms of completion of tasks and milestones that you set out to complete for this phase. Moving further over to the right, it's often important to understand what you've previously billed before you determine what you want to bill up to. So in this case, as a user, I would look at how much was planned, unbilled, how much we achieved in terms of milestones and tasks, looked at how much we previously billed to bring that all together, all the critical information right here at your fingertips, so you know exactly how much you want to bill up to. And that's what you're about to see me enter here. So in this case, I've decided in this invoice to bill up to 50% for that phase, which means currently doing this invoice will be $16,000. You can also see there's been a little bit of work done on the design development phase. So I'm going to go ahead and bill for a little bit of that as well. Let's say $1,000 over there. The next button is going to take you to the next tab, which presents your hourly phases. You can see them listed over there on the left. We notice that most architects bill hourly phases by role. So in each phase, you'll see the roles involved in that phase, along with their planned hours, previously billed hours, and unbilled hours. This again all makes it easy for you to determine the number of hours or dollars you want to invoice for each role in each phase. There's consultants involved in our fictitious project, so I'll collect for their fees and pass those on to my client by entering some information here on the consultants tab. You're going to see me add another, I think, $1,000 to the invoice to pass through for some civil engineering work that was completed as well. On the expenses tab, you'll see all the billable expenses logged during the services window. You can pick which ones to add or them all with one click. And lastly, we give you the opportunity to add other miscellaneous items. I'll add some miscellaneous fire posters here. And as we've been going through this, hopefully you've also noticed that the totals at the top of each tab and at the upper right corner, the total due has been updating all along the way, so we know the exact amount that we're totally asking the customer for. So that's how you build an invoice with all the right information right there at your fingertips. Next, we're going to move on to the designer. So the designer's all about designing the output. It puts you in control of what info you want to display on the invoice and lets you set the metadata, like the issue date, the terms, the due date, etc. We also put you in control of whether or not you include previously billed amounts and line items that are not billed in the current invoice. Then, when ready, it's on to preview, where you can see exactly what your customers are going to see when you send them this invoice. Here you can see how we've organized invoices specifically for architects. No configuration required. Fixed phases, hourly phases are organized by roles, consultant fees, expenses, and other items. For fixed fee services and consultant services, we've included the planned and previously billed amounts. For hourly fee services, we've included the previously billed hours. And when I'm ready, I can mark that invoice as open, download it, send it to QuickBooks or Xero. Now that we've created and opened our invoice, let's look at how we track and report on that. Let's jump back into the project invoice list to see our 2 invoices, and then jump over to project financials for a report that tells us for each phase where we stand. We show you the critical information about what's been done, what's current, and what needs to be done on that project financials report. So now that you've seen our state-of-the-art invoicing system built specifically for architects, I hope you appreciate our vision. We're not done yet. We love to hear from our customers. So please do not hesitate to reach out with any and all feedback, ideas, etc. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's shift gears. Thomas Budzik is one of our customers that frequently participates in our research. It's a pleasure to bring him back online to talk to Monograph co-founder and good friend, Mr. Alex Dixon. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Hey, thank you, Pete. That was wonderful. That was a wonderful walkthrough. Thomas, how are you doing?
Good, Alex. How are you?
Oh, good. Really appreciate you spending some time with us today. I'm excited to dig in, and I'd love to open up if you want to, tell us a little bit more about your firm.
Sure. So my firm's Thomas Architects. We're based in the Chicagoland area, founded in 2005. We've always focused on smaller scale projects. So we complete about 150 to 200 projects a year, single family residential, multifamily, commercial, and industrial. I would say given the types of projects we work on, about 85% or so is fixed fee based. And given that we do so many projects a year, we generate anywhere from 30 to 70 invoices per month.
Wow, that's man, the overhead on that. It's a lot of work. Yeah. Now I know also that you yourself kind of were had been interested in project management generally as kind of a personal interest. Is that right as well?
Yes, it's definitely something I've probably tried everything that's out there, even some really obscure ones to oversee project management softwares that different terminology. So yeah, we've tried a lot.
Yeah, and now you've landed on Monograph, which we're certainly excited your journey has ended here. We hope it's the end of the journey too. It's a pretty incredible amount of invoices that you have to send a month with the size of the team. So I would love to unpack a little bit like what your invoicing process looked like before kind of adopting Monograph. Like take us through a day in the life of invoicing for all those projects.
Sure. So way back in the day, it was basically Excel spreadsheets, and it took. I remember at one point I figured out it took me 2 days to do invoicing, and I was doing at that point maybe 20 invoices, and I figured out there has to be a better way. So our previous process was basically we would have our admin create a report. I would go through and mark up manually % complete of each project at each phase, hand that report back to our admin. She would create draft invoices. I would review and mark them up. She would have to make the adjustments to those drafts. I'd have to go back and then approve them. And then only at that point, we'd actually be able to send them out to our clients.
Wow. So you're printing off these and redlining them and handing them back. So it's kind of like an offline process in a lot of ways.
It wasn't quite that manual. It was like an Excel spreadsheet that I'd mark up notes in there, but it was kind of old school, kind of time consuming.
A lot of back and forth. Yeah, we've heard that from some other customers too. It's just the coordination and communication that goes into handling and drilling down into actually what gets on the invoice is definitely a huge part of the process, which is 2 days for 20 invoices. You quadrupled the amount you send. So man, that's going to be so much time. Yeah. I mean, there's another interesting aspect of this, and we've heard from other folks, and I think yourself included, in that kind of empowering the team to have access to the information or being able to do more in the system too. I'd love to also hear your thoughts on on the empowerment side of giving, project managers or project architects the ability to do more with that information. How do you approach that at your firm?
Yeah, sure. So very good question. So I realized a long time ago that bringing transparency to the process for our clients was really important. Having them really understand what we do is important. And I came to the realization I really need to do the same thing for my staff. I really need to give them the data they need to empower them, give them access to actionable data. So with Monograph, they have a lot more insight into where projects are budget-wise. And they are now basically the ones who determine the % complete for all the projects. So it's no longer sitting on my lap where I have to talk to my PAs or PMs and say, where are we with this project? They're just inputting the information right there. So.
Yeah, awesome. So I imagine that's one of the ways that your workflow has changed after kind of adopting Monograph and working through the new invoicing product that Pete, demoed earlier. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So rather than me redlining all of the projects, that data is just there. And so the admin knows at the beginning of the month that they need to just create those draft invoices. We still have a similar process in place where I review those drafts, but I can also tell you it is such a pleasure now to look at the draft invoices. I don't mark up the invoices. I can just look at them, and if I need to make an adjustment as an executive decision, I can make a quick adjustment right there. It's easy to do. I don't have to ask my admin, can you do these 12 things? So it's been much more comfortable now, much easier to work through the invoicing now.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. The review kind of side of the equation is something we're also really keen on learning more about and expanding on as we continue to build out the product, because that's, as you mentioned, on the backside of actually drafting the invoices, the other kind of really time-consuming part is in the review and kind of editing of that before it actually gets sent out to the client. You touched on something, earlier that I wanted to revisit, and, also in the bigger picture of what this whole kind of presentation is about is kind of unlocking the client experience. And you mentioned the transparency. Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit more, a little more color around that in terms of how you think about what are the aspects of transparency, and how do you create that kind of ideal client experience around invoicing?
Sure. So there are a few things that we try to focus on. One of the things is we do accept electronic payments, which is something that's really critical for our clients.
Yeah.
It's most of our clients are consumers, so they're homeowners. So they're used to paying by credit card, so they want to have that option. And so for them to have an invoice that's clear, easy to understand, and then easy to pay, all of those things just improve the customer service experience. So it's really nice that Monograph is looking into and working on that electronic payments. If I'm not saying anything I shouldn't be there, but
Yeah, no.
It's really important for us. We've accepted electronic payments for many years now. So.
Gotcha. Oh, that's super exciting. We'll be getting to that here very, very shortly too. I did want to also dig in, in terms of, as Pete in the previous presentation kind of mentioned, there's, most firms will also use an accounting tool as well to kind of manage their books, and most of those accounting tools also offer invoicing capabilities. But as Pete alluded to, they're often very, kind of this is a baseline standard because they have to work in many different industries. I'm curious to hear, like, specifically comparing kind of what Monograph outputs versus those. They're, going back to the transparency aspect, are there aspects of the invoicing in Monograph that you think are like, just what for that experience sets it apart from, say, like a QuickBooks or something like that in your eyes when communicating with a client?
Sure. So basically the invoices match what is in our proposals. They're really clear. Whatever they see on whatever they're expected from their proposal, that's what they see on their invoice. And you don't really have that same ability when you're working with something like QuickBooks. Now we do use QuickBooks, and we'll send our Monograph invoices to QBO, but the actual invoice in QBO just doesn't really, there's a disconnection there, and that disconnection is going to lead to confusion and questions, and that's time on our end, and it's a reduced customer experience for our customers. So to have an invoice that clearly reflects what was originally agreed to is really important. Now, there's aspects of the QuickBooks system that are beneficial. So one of the things that we really like is that there's there's access to some metadata there when you're sending out invoices, which allows us to be a little bit more proactive in invoicing, which is also kind of important. One of the things, for example, is when we email out an invoice, if we notice that they haven't opened the invoice, and we can see that data in QuickBooks, we haven't opened that invoice in 3 weeks. Normally in the past, we might wait till that invoice goes past due, and then we have to wonder what's going on. Now, if we just see that they haven't opened an invoice, we could just reach out to them and just say, hey, just want to confirm, did you get the invoice? And maybe we find out that, they're on vacation, and that's why they didn't open it. And so we don't have to approach this from sort of a negative perspective. We say, okay, great. Let me know when you're back in town. There was invoices waiting for you. Just, we'll take care of it when you're back here. So that's just another way to be proactive with the customer service experience with invoicing.
No, I love that. One, it gets back to the client experience, and you're kind of giving them that nudge, and but obviously being nice about it. But the other part is, I hear some product suggestions in here too that I think Pete and I are going to have to riff on, as well as thinking about, again, also the indicators up front is kind of letting customers know when it's time to bill, or like the sort of the pre-work as well, in terms of getting that information in front of you. We did have a question from the audience come in. If you're interested in taking a swing at it, it was about actually the electronic payment side specifically. And David asks, do you add assuming if someone's paying from a credit card or like there's a fee associated with it, do you pass that on to the client, or do you absorb that as like an overhead cost on you as part of your business expenses?
Sure, that's a really good question. So originally, when we looked at it, we never passed that fee on to our clients. So that was never on the table. But we looked at whether or not that fee should be considered a project cost or just lumped into overhead. And we've determined it's kind of simple if you think about it. Whether or not someone chooses to pay by credit card shouldn't really have an impact as to whether or not a project is profitable. That shouldn't affect our profit margin. Just in the same way that you wouldn't charge specifically for computer usage or something else. So we have it in our overhead. We know now with several years of data that there is a percentage of our clients that are going to pay by credit card. And so right now it's really easy for us to budget that and just build that right into our overhead rate.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, really appreciate you diving into that. It's been a common question, even as we've been researching the electronic payments side too, is understanding, where everybody kind of approaches it differently. So they appreciate you, weighing in with your thoughts, and obviously a good backlog of data to draw from.
I did want to add one other thing that's kind of important, because most of our clients are homeowners. They're used to paying by credit cards, but when we have companies as clients, they're not. So they're more likely to pay by wire transfer or ACH. So having the ability to choose between either giving them a link to pay by credit card or ACH is really beneficial, because sometimes, yes, there's a really big invoice and you'd really love to not pay that to, 2.75% or whatever it is, for that really big one. So to be able to control that is really critical too.
Good to know. Yeah, absolutely. Some of those as you larger and larger projects and those invoices do get larger and larger, that fee can begin to stack up. So duly noted. Before we switch gears, I just wanted to chat on one last item, which is the kind of idea of a client portal. And obviously you're in architecture, repeat customers are a big thing, but even during the duration of a project, there's a lot of invoices that go out. And so I'd love to kind of end on any thoughts you have around like a client portal, the invoicing experience, kind of as it extends throughout the life cycle of a project or across a client with, say, multiple projects, and how that ties into the client experience. If you have any kind of last thoughts to share there.
Sure. Client portal, that's kind of the holy grail in terms of the invoicing side of things. Some of the pain points that we've seen, for example, is client doesn't pay invoice number 2, they get invoice number 3, they pay invoice number 3, and they're confused about, well, wait a second, I thought I'm up to date. So having a client portal where they see everything, and I say, oh yeah, okay, oh that's right, I forgot to pay invoice number 2 or whatever. So that's really important. The other aspect of it is we do have clients with a lot of repeat business where for them it's cumbersome to open up 10 different emails or do 10 different separate payments. So for them to go in a single client portal and just click, pay, and it's all done would be beneficial to them. So it's a great idea. I would love to know when it's going to be implemented.
Yeah, I love it. No, that's great. Pete and I've had some very, very kind of in-depth discussions around this exact item, which is I love your thoughts on that too. We're just wrapping up here. I really appreciate you joining us, Tom. It's been wonderful chatting, and we do want to reveal a little bit more product stuff. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Pete, if you want to take over.
Happy to. Tom, always a fountain of good information. Thank you so much. Yes, I've got more exciting news to share. We're in the middle of a private beta for a new payments workflow that will let you get paid electronically by your clients through the Monograph platform. Here's a quick video of how that's going to work. Pardon, it's a little bit rough because it's in private beta, but essentially, first you'll see how an architect, you can send an invoice and payment link to your client. You've got complete control over what types of payment methods you accept as well. This generates an email to your client, as you may have guessed. Now, putting on the client hat over in Yahoo Mail, you're going to see the client open the invoice email and click a link to pay. That opens an architect branded view of the invoice. You're going to see it here in a second. The client clicks pay, gets prompted for, well, first they see the beautiful invoice you've created for them. Then they click pay, get prompted to pay via ACH or credit card. If they choose ACH, they can log into their bank or put in their banking info. If they choose credit card, they simply enter their credit card information. I didn't go through this payment, but you can probably imagine if I went ahead and logged into my Bank of America account here, I could easily pay by just clicking that pay button that you see down there in the lower right corner behind the scenes there. Now, back in the architect's world, let me fast forward here because we're running out of time. Back in the architect's world, I'm going to get there in 1 second. If the client did complete the payment, the invoice would automatically be marked as paid over there on the right, and the Monograph reports would affect that as well. So for example, over in the project financials report we saw earlier, you would see that that invoice has been paid. So like I said, we're currently in private beta with that feature. You can email me if you want to get involved. Otherwise, we hope to launch that capability to everyone next month. And with that, I just want to say thank you to our customers who participated in the research, our product and engineering team for delivering everything you've just seen, and to you, our customers, for listening to this session. Please, again, reach out if you have any questions or any additional thoughts. I'm always happy to chat. George, onward and upward. What's next? Lead us on.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Alex, and Tom for joining us as well. I mean, that was mind blowing. That was so awesome to see. I think everybody in the stage itself, all the comments, a lot of people are going like, yes, like what? This is great when they saw that payments feature come in. So yeah, really excited for more to come. I think this whole conversation around the client portal is really fascinating. And what does that mean to like really create the smoothest client experience possible? So anyway, I always get excited about what the product roadmap has in store for us. I know the team loves hearing from all of you. So keep those ideas and feedback coming as we do everything we do here at Monograph in service of building a better product for all of you. Thanks so much for joining, everyone, and we'll see you soon.